Okay. If you have joined and you can hear me clearly, as you keep joining and as you keep hearing me, just type in yes in the chat box. And let's wait for others to come in when it's 7. As you join and as you come in, if you can hear me, if you can hear me talk, just type yes in the chat box so that I can know that my sound is correct. Okay, James, welcome. Good evening. Temi, welcome. I can see Silvanus. I can see K Poms. I can see Olawuyi Clement. Let's let's give the rest of the people some time to join us. I can see Anne. Welcome. If you can hear me, just type yes in the chat box, just so that if you have any issues, it can be sorted for you. Welcome, Ugochi Madu. Let's wait for some time for the rest to join us. Olawi, good evening. As you join and as you come in, if you can hear me speak, you say yes in the chat box so that if you have any problem, it can be sorted for you. Einstein, good evening. Welcome to today's session. And good evening. Kauta, good evening. Let's wait for some minutes, like 3 minutes past 7, so that others can join us. Welcome, welcome. Einstein, you are welcome. Alisa, welcome. Olami, welcome. Okay, I'll go ahead to share my screen while others join us. And if you can see my screen, you just say yes in the chat box. Okay, that's cool. So let's just get started because actually we are going to get started from where we stopped yesterday. So first things first, I would like to say that a new day has been added, like a new class day has been added, and that's going to be on Monday. And now because of some constraints that we have decided to add a new day, which is going to be the last session. And that day is going to be dedicated to just Bubble. Today we are going to get introduced to Bubble. And on Monday, we are going to get really in depth into Bubble. That's when we are going to create our MVP project. So just to make that known. And the new day, which is on Monday, is going to be for 3 hours. So it's going to be from 6 p.m. Nigerian time to 9 p.m. Nigerian time. That's going to be on Monday. So you can also spread the word, and also you can have that factored into your schedule. So today there are things that we are going to look at, and one of it is going to be that I'll show you guys how to create a pop-up for a low fidelity prototype, because I had some people say that yesterday that they don't know how to come up with this pop-up here that I created for the low fidelity prototype. So I would have that created. If you see this page here, if I prototype the home page, if I present the home page and I click on post job, you'll see that a pop-up shows up. So let's wait for that to load. So this is what I am talking about. This pop-up that shows up, this login pop-up. Some people said I should walk them through the process. So I'll just do that for 2 minutes. Now to create a pop-up like that, all you have to do is create a frame. Use a frame to do that. So select the frame tool. You can create any size you want. Then you can put in your input fields and your login text here. When you create all of that with the login button, then you come here. Let's say you want the users to click on this button for that frame to show up as a login pop-up. What you do is come here, select this post a job button first, then come here, click on prototype. When you click on prototype, connect this post a job button to this frame here, to the login frame that you created. Now, when you connect it, the interaction details card is going to show up. Keep it set to on tap. When you keep it set to on tap, then for the action that will happen when the on tap event is triggered, you would come here, you change this from navigate to open overlay. Now, let's zoom out. When you change it to open overlay, you would come here and you would keep the set to centered, meaning that when this post a job button is clicked on, this frame 4 will become an overlay on this major details page frame, and it's going to stay at the center. That's just what it is. Now, if I come here, if I select the details page and I present it, you'll see that when I click on post a job, the login frame shows up here. Now, if you want that background effect whereby the main page itself is going to be blurred out, what you do is when you make this connection to this frame, I hope everyone can see, when you make this connection to this frame, you'd come here, you'd see these two options here. This one says close when clicking outside. Keep it selected. Then we have an add background behind overlay property here. Select it. When you select it, then you can set the color that you want to appear at the background of the whole website when this pop-up shows up. So currently it is set to black at an opacity of 25. I can set this to 46%. Then if I come here now, you'll see that this effect is there. If I click on post the job again, this effect shows up. So that's how that effect was created. That's how that pop-up was created. So I hope that's being sorted. So let's go to the next topic of the day, which is a very important topic. Remember, yesterday we went through the research process and we also created a low fidelity prototype of our idea. So today we are going to see how to come up with a high fidelity prototype of the web application that we are trying to design. So I would like to start with some topics that are really important so that your design skills can actually translate from UI design in Figma to website design in HTML, CSS, Webflow, Bubble, and any other front end tool out there. Reason is because the same concept or the same principles that is applicable to UI design in Figma is the same principles that is applicable to UI design, whether you are building with React, whether you are building with Vue or Angular or Bootstrap or Tailwind. It's still the same principle. All you have to do is learn the principle at this stage. If you can understand the principle at this Figma stage, it means that if you decide any day to pick up React or JavaScript or HTML or CSS, all you just find yourself learning is how to write those languages. You won't be bothered about the principles. You get it? Like, let's say, if you understand that for you to build a house, you have to use blocks. All you'll be worried about is the strength to jack the blocks. You won't be worried about knowing what is being used in building a house. So I would like us to understand the core principles behind UI design in Figma, especially web design. So the first topic that we are going to look at today is responsive design. I would like us to understand what responsive design is. When we understand all these topics, then we are going to speed up the process of creating our high fidelity screens. The reason is because creating high fidelity screens is really easy. It's not something difficult. It's just colors, fonts, and shadows and all of that, and duplication. So, but this is really important for us to understand. So, responsive design is simply designing a website for different screens. Professionally, it is simply designing a website for different viewports. Now, I'll write that down so that you don't get confused. Now, if you are from Nigeria, this is what they call big grammar, big grammar. But for now, just understand that responsive design is you designing your website so that your website can adapt to different screens or different devices. Now, let's open these websites. Let's make it practical. Let's make this practical. Sorry, I would have to log out of this. So now, this website is being displayed on a laptop currently. And as you can see, it looks good. The user experience is good. If I toggle this website to be displayed on an iPhone, this is how this same website looks like here. Now, what this website is doing is this. It is responding to the device in which it is being displayed on. That is what responsive design is. Now, it is up to you to design the website to look good on any device it is being viewed on. If I view this website now on an iPad Air, you'll see that it looks like this. It looks different from the way it looked like when it was being viewed on a mobile phone. Now, there are some principles that you need to understand so that you can design a friendly website that will be responsive. One of it is this. Whenever you hear responsive website, concern yourself with the width of the device, not the height of the device. The height of the device is not really important when you are talking about designing responsive websites. It is the width of the device. Like, as you can see, an iPhone device is smaller in width. Like, it is not as wide as an iPad device. And an iPad device and an iPhone device is not as wide as a laptop. So that is all you should concern yourself with, the wideness of the device. The height of the device is not really considered when you are dealing or when you are making a website responsive. That's one principle for you that's one thing for you to always take note of. Now, the second principle or the second topic under responsive design that I would like you to take note of is containers. Now, this is really important. Containers. Now, every design tool out there, Webflow, Bubble, HTML and CSS, React, every front-end design and engineering technology out there is revolving around containers. Now, it is important you understand what a container is and the idea behind containers. Because when you understand the idea behind containers, then you can understand how to engineer your website to be responsive. Now, a container is simply an element that is capable of containing another element, period. And in Figma, yeah, there is a way you create a container. To create a container in Figma is pretty easy. All you have to do is use the frame tool. Take note, the frame tool. When you use the frame tool and you create a layout, you have created a container. This is a container. If you also select the frame tool and you select any of these templates here, let's say an iPhone SE layout template, this is also a container. Now, that's how to create containers in Figma. And I would also like to bring to your knowledge that when you use the frame tool to create a layout and you make that layout an auto layout, you have also created a container. Auto layouts are containers also. So the two types of layouts are just regular layout and auto layout. Now, why do I say you need to know the concept behind containers? The reason you need to know the concept behind containers is that every website is a combination of containers inside containers, inside containers, inside containers. Like this website here, first of all, the website itself is a big container. It contains all these objects. Now, inside this website, you would have a container here that will contain all of this content. You'd have a container here. Let's make that practical in Figma, actually. Let's say this is my website, yeah? Now, what you do is, this is how websites are structured. You first of all define a container here. Now, let's give this container a stroke color. Now, this container that you have defined here means that your website will recognize that a container is here. Now, inside this container, you can divide it further. You can create another container inside this container on the right side here or on the left side here. And I'll give it a stroke color now. Now, this is me creating another container inside this container. So I can come here now and create another container on the right side here like this. Now, this is how websites are structured behind the scene. This is what you don't see. So what I have here now is one major container. Okay, what I have here is this first container, which is the website itself. Then I have another major container here that contains this container and this container. Now, I have been able, first of all, to use this container to define this region. Like I have been able to use this container here to tell this website that give me this space. I want to use this space to design something. Now, if that space has been given, I will then go inside that space and divide it into two. Further, I'll say, okay, inside this space that I have gotten, I want to divide it into two so that I can put some text and some button here. I can say, hi, welcome. Something like this. I can say, hi, welcome here. Let's make this smaller. I can say, hi, welcome here. Then I can put a button here. And I would say, get started or login. Something like this. Now, this is happening inside this container that's on the left side. Now, I can come here now inside this other container on the right side, and I would create another container inside of it. Now, I will create this container so that I can use this new container now to put an image. Now, I would right click on this new container that I have created, and I would use a plugin. I'll just use the Unsplash plugin, something like this. And I would place the Unsplash plugin inside. I would use the, I would use the Unsplash plugin, and I would have this image stay inside this section here. Now, you see that this makes sense. It is properly organized. Like, this first container was used to define this big space. Now, the website has allocated this space for me to place some designs on. And inside this space, I divide, creating one container on the left and creating one on the right. Now, for this one that I created on the left, I have this text inside of it and this button. Now, I can even go further and say for this text, yeah, I would create a container inside this other container that will be for this text, just like this. And I would create another container that will contain this button, just like this. I hope this is making sense. Now, if this is making sense, just say yes in the chat box so that I am screen sharing. Okay. Everyone see my screen? Okay, all right then, okay then. So if that's making sense, let's proceed. Now, having this stuff structured inside this container is really important. Like, it's really important, because the laptop view of this website, if I want to create the mobile view, this is what's going to happen. Let's say this is the mobile view. What I'll do is, I'll still come here, I'll bring this container, I would create the first container now, which is this. I would create it in this mobile view like this. This time is, since the mobile view is not really wide, I'll make it like this. I'll make it taller like this. Then I would carry this first container's content. I would keep it up here. As you can see, when I bring out that container, all its content comes with me. I hope that's making sense now. So then I would come here, I would bring this other container, and I'll place it inside this container vertically, just like this. Now, you can see that this container is still this container, but this time the content inside the container are arranged differently. I just had to place the first container upwards and the second sub-container downwards. And with this like this, I have gotten a mobile view of this desktop view. Does this make sense? Okay. All right then. Now, someone is asking, will the frames stroke be visible? Now, like I said before now, these strokes, yeah, these frames, these layout strokes is just me demonstrating how it is done behind the scene. That is how websites are structured. Like, that's how websites are behind the scene. Everything you see on a website is inside a container, inside another container, inside another container. That's how websites are structured. So you need to understand that it is you need to understand that websites are containers inside containers inside containers. When you understand that, then you would know what to put inside one container, what to put inside another container, so that when it is time for you to make your website responsive, you can go ahead and make it really responsive. So that's it. Now, take note, like I said before now, containers in Figma are layout and auto layout. Take note of that. So if you have any questions on the container, no, I haven't made it responsive yet. I'm to explain how it is done. Matilda, that's my answer to you. So if you have any questions, is there any need to draw the boxes? No. Like I said, these boxes are just me trying to explain how it is done behind the scenes, how websites are made responsive behind the scene. Can you explain the use of auto layout again? I would get to that. I would get to the use of auto layout. Now let's proceed. Any questions? Let's proceed. Now, okay. I would get to your question, Chinindu. Prototype or prototype and prototype or prototype. It depends on what you want and what's been recommended. Now, for the fact that we are done with our low fidelity design, means that it is time for us to start creating our high fidelity screens. And going by the logic that I just demonstrated now, it means that creating our high fidelity screens, we have to have it behind our mind that we are trying to create content inside containers. And those containers will be independent of themselves on the website. Now, it is those containers that you would make auto layout. And don't worry about the complexity. I'll make it easy for you to understand. First things first, let's get started with creating a high fidelity screens by creating this navigation bar at the top here. We need to create a button that says post a job, and we need to have a text here that says logo. So I would come here. Take note, I already created a button here. So I would come here. I would bring in that button. Then the next thing I need is that text that says logo. So I would say logo. I would bring it here. Now, this button is an auto layout button. If you don't understand the core basics of auto layout, you can check my 10-hour video on YouTube. In that video, I explain how to handle auto layout. Now, I would keep this here like this. Now, going by our logic here, this section at the top here will be a container. That's it. It's going to be a container that will contain this element and this button element. That's it. So let's create that. I would highlight both of these. When I highlight them, I would keep them selected and I would create an auto layout on the both of them. Now, the way to do that is to hold down your shift key and press the A key on your keyboard. Now, when you do that, an auto layout will be created, and over here, the auto layout is frame 1. Now, I would rename that to navbar. Now, for this auto layout, look at the auto layout settings here. I would come here and I would set the alignment of the content in the auto layout to stay at the center. If I select this, this means that everything inside the auto layout will stay at the center of the auto layout vertically and horizontally. And that's what's happened here. Now, I would come here and I would say for the spacing between items, I can decide to just set the spacing between items to 120. And if I stretch this, we have a problem there. Now, I would keep this navbar auto layout selected and I would add a fill color to it so that everyone can follow properly. Now, I have added a fill color to this auto layout. Now, since this auto layout will stay at the top of our website, it means that it has to stretch from this point to this point. And this post a job button has to stay on the right, and this logo text here has to stay on the left. So the way to make that work just fine is to use the resizing property here. So if I come here and I try to expand this navbar, you'd see that the button here and the logo, they are not actually staying on the right and on the left the way they should stay. So to fix that, I would Control Z to go back to how we were. I would select the button inside the auto layout, come here under the resizing property, and I would set the horizontal resizing property. Now, if you remember, I mentioned that when you are talking about responsive design has to do mostly with the wideness of a device, and the wideness of a device is is relative to the width or to the horizontal movement of the device, because horizontal is from left to right or from right to left. So, and wideness has to do with left and right also. So I'll just only focus on the horizontal resizing property here. I'll change it from hog content to fixed width. Then I would come here, I would keep that text selected, and I'll change it from hog content to fixed width also. Now I would select the auto layout, which is nav by itself. I would click on alignment and padding. Come here, you can see where my mouse cursor is on. I'll click on packed, and I'll select space between. Now, space between means that the two items inside this auto layout will always have a space between them. The space that will be created will always be between the both of them. So when I select space between, and I come here now, you'll see that if I increase the width towards the right, the button only goes to the right, the logo stays on the left side. Same here, same for here, just like this. Now, if that's clear, you can also say that in the chat box. Now, we need to make this logo have some space from the left side and come into this point. And for this also to also come into this point. Now, for you to do that, you need to use the padding property. Remember, padding is the inner space between an object and its content, but margin is the outer space. Now, in this case, we want to create an inner space between this navbar component and this logo, which is the content of the navbar layout. And this button is also inside this navbar auto layout. So we want to create an inner space between the navbar layout and this logo and this button. So we are going to use the padding property. So I would select the navbar auto layout here. I would click on alignment and padding here, and I would set the left padding to, let's say, 64. And as you can see, the inner space has been created. Now I can choose to come here and set it to 120 actually. And come here, select this, and set this to 120. I would still select the navbar auto layout, and I would set the right padding to 120. Now, I need some space at the top also, so that this button can have some breathing space at the top and at the bottom. So how do I do that? I need to set a top padding value of 32. You can set to any value of your choice actually. I would set the bottom padding value to 32, and that's okay. Yeah. So now you can see that if I keep this here and I increase it towards the left and right, it looks okay. This logo has a 120 px padding space from the end of this navbar to itself. Same for this button. That's consistent now. Now I can carry this navbar and I can place it on any, tablet or desktop device of my choice. I can bring in an iMac and I can place this, I can have this stay in here. Let's make the iMac a different color so that you'd see it clearly. I can bring this in here and I can choose to resize it. And you see that if I resize it, it looks good on an iMac. If I bring in a MacBook Pro 14, I can still carry this same navbar auto layout or container and place it on this MacBook Pro 14. Let's change the color of the MacBook Pro 14. Let's bring this in. Now you can see that when I bring it in, it's not sitting well for now, but I can still, I think I have to zoom in for some people. So I can still bring this in here, keep this here like this, and resize it, and it's still sitting well. So just this navbar that I have created can be reused on any device at all. Any device, any desktop or tablet device. Now, let's even bring in a mobile device. I can decide to use this for my mobile device. All I'll do is, first things first, I'll make this a component so that I can reuse it and edit it. When I make this navbar a component, I'll come in here, I'll bring in the navbar components instance, then I'll change the color of the mobile. Now, as you can see, this navbar is very wide from the components, from the mobile layout. I would squeeze it into this point. And I would come here, I would squeeze this into this point. Now you can see that logo and button are really close. What I'll do in this case is that this navbar instance, I would keep it selected. Take note, not the parents, the instance. I'll keep it selected. I would come here, I would reduce the padding to 16, the left padding to 16 and the right padding to 16. And you can see that I have just converted this navbar here to a mobile navbar also at the top. And that's fine. I can come in here and change and edit the content of this button, login. And that's okay, just like this. So if it's clear, you can say it in the chat box so that we can proceed. All right, Shidindu says, why is it important to use auto layout for the navbar? It's important to use auto layout so that the responsiveness and the content of your auto layout can adapt easily to any layout the navbar is being placed on. As you can see, I created one navbar and I have been able to use this one navbar on any device, just one navbar. I've been able to use it on a tablet device, on a desktop device, even on a mobile device. And that's because it's an auto layout. You cannot achieve this if you don't use an auto layout to create this. So that's why it is important. Now we have created that top section of our low fidelity screen. Let's create this section here that has explore remote jobs. So to do that, what I'll do is I'll just come here. I'll copy that text. Now I'll make sure the text uses one of our saved text style. I'll go with the medium heading. I'll go with the heading text, which is the large heading. I'll keep it selected. Then I'll come back here. You see we have this here. I'll copy it. I'll keep this selected and I'll go with small heading, which is this. Then I'll come back here. You see, I have an input field here that says enter your email to subscribe for daily updates. Now I created an input field yesterday, which is this. So I'll just change the text. I'll say enter your email. So I'll say enter your email for updates, for daily updates. Then for the button, I'll bring in a button here and I'll say subscribe. That's okay. So now the next issue that we are going to be faced with is how to make all of these stay inside one container and become one component so that we can reuse it also, just the same idea. Now, how do we do that? We are going to use the auto layout property. So I'll bring this here and I'll bring this here. Now, this is how you should do it when you are faced with a task like this. First of all, make sure the text are wrapped inside an auto layout first. And remember, I said auto layout is a container. So put these two texts, which are similar elements or similar objects, put them inside a container first. Then create another container that you will put these two similar elements. Then create another container, which is another auto layout, that you will put these two group containers that you have created. So let's create a container or an auto layout for these two texts. So I'll select both of them and I'll create an auto layout for the both of them. Now, if you come to the lo-fi screen, you would see that this is staying at the center. So I would want the auto layout to be a center-based auto layout. So the auto layout has been created. I would rename it from frame 1 to explore auto layout. You can call it whatever you want to call it. Now, when I rename it to explore auto layout, I would come here and I would add a fill color. and you can see that the color is white. Now I would keep the auto layout selected still, and I would come here and I would align the content of the auto layout to stay at the center always, just like this. Now you would see that this auto layout has no padding around. And if I resize the auto layout, you see that it is not actually resizing properly. The objects are not properly contained in the container, and that's a problem. It's not a good container if the container cannot contain its objects at all times. So to have that sorted, we need to actually make the container a responsive container, because it is when the container is responsive that it will respond to any reduction in size or increment in size. And while it is responding, it will always contain what is inside of it. That is what makes a container a good container, if it can contain its elements regardless of the size that it is resized to. So I would come here, I would select the text, this explore remote jobs text, which is inside the auto layout container. I would select the explore remote jobs text. Then I would come here in the properties panel here. I would set its horizontal resizing value to fill container. Now, fill container means fill up your container, like cover your container. If I set this to fill container here, what it means is that no matter how the auto layout, which is the container, no matter how it is resized, this text will always stay inside of it, and it will always occupy any space that it sees. That's what fill container means. Like, it's always going to stay inside the container and fill up every available space that is there for it. Now, I'll do the same thing for apply for remote jobs. I would set the horizontal resizing value to fill container. Now you see that if I select the auto layout now and I resize it, the content inside the container are always there. The contents are never leaving there. Let's align this to the center. Let's align this to the center. Now you see that the content are always inside the container because I set the horizontal resizing property to fill container. So they're always going to stay inside the container. That's now responsive. So for this section here, we have created this part. Let's get this part sorted. So I would come here. Now for this part, I would select both of them, create an auto layout on the both of them, and set the alignment property to center. Then the spacing between items, I would set it to 8, just like this. And personally, I am okay with this. Yeah, I am okay with this. So the next thing that's going to happen here is for us to combine these two containers now into one container. But before we do that, I would change the name of this from frame 1 to subscribe field. Just like this. Now I would select these two containers and I would create an auto layout, which is me creating another container on the both of them, just like this. Now we have a new container that contains all other containers. So you can see the idea I was trying to sell, which is a website is a set of containers inside containers inside containers. As you can see, we have been creating containers and adding them inside a container, creating a new container and putting them inside new containers. So let's, Peter, your audio is not working. Okay, tell me, say I can I go over that again? Now, I would give time for that very soon. Let's arrive somewhere. Now, this new container that I have created, I would like the content inside of it to always stay at the center. Then I would like the spacing between the items in the new container, which is our auto layout, to be 48, just like this. Now I would keep the container selected and I would add a fill color of white to have this. Now I would rename this to hero content. You can call it whatever you want to call it. I would rename it to hero content. Now I want us to check out something here. Let's resize this let's resize this container to see how its content will behave. Now you can see that it is messed up. And it is messed up because we have not set the individual containers to behave the way they should behave. So the first container here, which is this container that has all of this content at the top here, I would select it. It is called Explore Auto Layout. Remember, I created it. I would select it, come here on the right side, and I'll change this from fixed width to fill container. Then I'll select the second container. I would come here, I'll change this from hog content to fill container. Now, if I select the major container itself and I expand it or reduce it, its content will always stay inside of it. So far, we have created this and this. Now let's bring in a MacBook Pro frame and let's start arranging the contents. So this is my MacBook Pro frame. That's me beginning to create the high fidelity screen of the website. So I'll keep this here. I would rename it to home page. Yep. Then I'll bring this in and I'll place it here. Now, you can see that placing this is a problem. I don't know, like if I place it like this, it means I am placing it blindly. I am not taking any calculative step. Now, the way to avoid that is to make sure that I apply a grid property on this layout. So I would apply a column grid property here. Reason is because column grids are the grids you pay attention to if you are designing a responsive design. So I would set this to 12. Then I would set the margin to 120. I've watched my video, you know that the margin property creates the margin space on the left and on the right side. Then I would set the gutter property to 24. Now I'll change this color to this. Now if I bring this in, I would keep it at the center. Then I can use this and I can stretch this. Now, if you take note, you'd see that this logo text stops at the end of this column line, and this button component stops at the end of this column line here. Reason is because when I was creating this navbar, I set the left padding to 120 and the right padding to 120. And when I was also creating my layout grid property, I set the margin property to a value of 120, which is definitely going to create a 120 px space on the right side of the layout and a 120 px space on the left side of the layout. So that's why we have this bouncing properly there. Now, the next thing I would like to do is to bring in this other section and place it inside our layout. Remember, we are beginning to create a high fidelity screen. So how do we do that? Personally, this is how I like to do it. I would like to create a layout here. Let's make it, let's change the color of this layout just so that we can identify it here. So I'll bring it, I'll make it stop where this other one stopped. And I'll just make sure the height is, let's say 420. You can set the height to whatever height you want to set it to. Then when I set it to 420, I'll then select this, make it a component, and bring an instance here, just like this. Now, I can place this at the center. Now, I'll select this new layout that I just created. I can take it out. I just making it invisible. Okay, sorry about that. Just make it white, actually. And I'll have this. Now I can bring this here, keep it at the center, and you can choose to resize or not, but it is okay staying like this. So what I have here is me already creating my high fidelity screen. Now it is up to you. Sometimes you may want to make it stay at the center like this. You may want this. If you want this, that's fine. But I would like for us to model we work remotely, where the hero section is just this section here. That's all. Then if you just come down here, you start seeing jobs listed. You don't have to waste time to look further. You just see this little hero section and you start seeing jobs. That's how I'd want us to model this design also. So if I come here to the lo-fi, you'll see that the next thing we have to do here is to create our job cards and have them listed. But before we do that, I'll leave the floor open for questions. If you have any questions. Okay, Peter says his audio is not working. If you have any questions, you can just say them to me now so that any questions, you can say them. If you want me to, you can just go ahead and type in yes, yes. Will the hero section be responsive? You set the height to 420. Now, like I said before now, the height does not really matter when you are dealing with designing a responsive website. It is the width that matters basically. The height doesn't really matter because it won't matter when the devices count, when you are talking about the devices. Someone says, can we scale down the auto layout for mobile? Yes, you can. And yes, you can. If I come here and I scale this down, you see that I can scale it down to that point. That can fit into a mobile device. So the next thing I would like for us to see how to create is the job cards, which is really important. So what I'll do is I would copy one of these cards so that we can have something to model after. And I'll paste it here. Okay, that wasn't a frame actually. Okay. I would copy one of these cards. I would group this card. Okay, then. So this card, I would like us to create this card for the card to be a responsive card so that we can use it on desktop device, laptop device, laptop device, tablet devices, and mobile devices. So let's go ahead and let's start creating this card. So I would create a frame. I'd like for the frame to be a 72 by 72 px frame. Now this frame is the frame that will have our logo, like the logo of the company hiring. So I'll keep it selected. I'll keep this to 100, have it be a circle. Now the next thing to create will be this text here that says UX designer at Google, salary and all of that. So let's create that. I'll just come here. I would create a text. I would say UX designer at Google. Okay, no. Okay, then this is okay. You can just decide to make it bold. I'd like to make it bold for visual hierarchy's sake. So UX designer at Google. Now there's another text there that says salary. This is 60K. And experience. Two years. Now, how do we make sure all of this stays inside an auto layout perfectly? Now, if you take note, this text here is an independent text and it occupies a horizontal space only by itself. This here is independent and this here is independent because this text sells the salary, this text sells the years of experience, which means they are two independent data sets, but they occupy a single horizontal position, which means that we need to put them inside a single container. So what I'll do is this. I'll keep the both of them selected first, and I'll make sure it's set to regular. Then for the size, I'll make sure it's 16, or I'll use my text style actually. I'll keep this set to 16. Now what I'll do is I'll keep both of them selected. Then I'll create an auto layout on the both of them. Now for this auto layout, the first thing I'll do is to align the content position to be the left position, which means all the content will always stay in or on the left side. Now the next thing to do is to make sure that this container is responsive. Now you can see that when I select the container and I add a fill color, if I try to resize it, the content is not actually responding at all. So the way to fix that is to select this text here, and set this to fill container. Set this to fill container, just like that. Now for the spacing between items of this auto layout, I would set the space between these two texts to 16px. You can set yours to whatever you want to set it to. Now you'll see that it's responsive. When I resize it, the content is reacting to me resizing it. And that's okay. Now we have this sorted. The next thing, I think this is too far, so I would set this to, let's set it to 4, and let's have this be whole content. And let's see how it's going to be like, okay? Then I would set the spacing between items to 16 now. That's okay. So now let's see how to combine this content and this auto layout that has these two contents into one object by putting them inside a new container, which will be an auto layout. No, using auto layout is not compulsory when you have not mastered it, but I am teaching you how to use auto layout because this is how you would, if you understand how to use the auto layout feature, then when we start designing with Bubble and you start HTML and CSS, you wouldn't find Flexbox to be strange. You wouldn't find it to be strange at all. So I would select these two items now, create an auto layout on the both of them. And I would also align the content to always stay at the left. Then I would select this text. I would set this to fill container. Select this auto layout that has these two items, and I would set this to fill container. Now I would select the auto layout and I would add a fill color to it. Then rename the auto layout to job description or job tag, whatever you want to call it is fine. And you'll see that if I resize this, it's actually reacting, this responsive. So what I'll do now is to have this section stay with this image section before I have the C details. I would have that sorted also. Now let's bring this together and let's see if we are actually on track. So I'll bring this here. And that's okay, yeah? Now let's look at the C details here. I would select this, I would say C details. Now this, hell, okay. Now I would come here, I'd say C details. Now this C details text, I would like it to be a small text. I'd like it to be 12 even. just like this. Now, I won't even bother myself about creating an auto layout for it. All I'll do is I'll just bring it inside. I'll bring it inside this existing auto layout. Take note, if you come here, you'll see the C details text here, and you'll see this auto layout here. So I would grab it here, and I'll take it in like this, and you'll see that it is placed inside the auto layout. And that's actually okay. You don't have to stress yourself about that. Now, the next thing we need to do is to see how to combine this and this to create a job card. So I would select both of them. Then I would create an auto layout on the both of them. Now, for this auto layout, I would come here and I would this to the left side of the auto layout, the horizontal left and vertical center, which is this position here. Then I would add a fill color to the auto layout. Now, for this section of this new auto layout, I would keep the horizontal resizing value to fill container, and I would keep this circle or this logo section to fixed width. Make sure it is set to fixed width. Now, when I select this new auto layout, which is frame 4, let's rename it to job card. When I select it, you'll see that if I resize it, it's actually responsive. I can keep it here and resize it to this point. And that's going to be fine. Now, I would keep it selected and I would add a padding around item value of 8. Or I can add a padding around item value of 12. Then give it a corner radius value of 8 to have this. The job card has been created, just like this. Now, just in case you are wondering why you should always have an auto layout created, yeah? I can come in here, take this out, and you'd see that this is not scattered. I can bring this in and rearrange this. I can bring this here, rearrange it here. I can bring this here. I can also take this out, bring in a new item. I can bring in a new item now. And I can bring this in here like this. Sorry about that. And bring this in here. Okay, that's actually reacting because I'm putting it inside the wrong layout. So I'll bring it in here. But I believe you just get the idea of what I'm trying to say. Like you can bring in things, take it out, bring it in, take it out, just like that. Like you can see. I can still come here and take this out. Now, you don't have to mess your spacings up. You don't have to mess your margin or your padding value. And if I select this layout, I can tell the engineer that the space between the margin space between this text, and this text is 7px. I can make it 8. Now I have something to communicate to the engineer that while you are engineering this user interface, ensure that the margin spaces are 8 pixels, because it is when the engineer honors these dimensions like this that you would have your design look like you have the app look like what you designed. It is when you just design without taking note of the spacings in your designs. You'd have the engineer just build what they feel they are seeing. But for the engineer to properly interpret what you have designed, the engineers have to properly take note of the space in the component. Like currently, I can be sure that the space between this logo here and this section of this text is 20px. I can decide to set it to 24. Now, when the engineer is building this job card and the engineer uses all this spacing value, what the engineer will build will look exactly like what I have here. That means that as a designer, you were relevant in the scheme of things. But if the engineer has to build what is in their mind or what they see on other websites, it means the engineers can just go to other websites, look at what they want to look at and build it without any guide, any principle, any recommendation at all. So that is why knowing how to build with auto layout is important. so that you properly space and position all the items on your layout for the engineers to replicate them properly. It actually makes you relevant in the scheme of things. It actually makes you relevant because most engineers can just look at a website and start coding and they'll have something similar to that. But the reason why there is a in the company is so that the designer will understand the reason why this circle have 24px before this text and all of that. And the designer should also understand this text should have 8px before this other text and 7px before this other text. If you can reasons for why that will improve the experience of the user, then that means the engineers will follow your principles and you will have numbers to give them. So that's the importance of auto-out. It increases your relevance in the grand scheme of things. When you are with engineers, your relevance is really felt. So we have created our job card. I would come here, I would click on create component, and our job card has been created. Now I can come here and just play around with the colors. I can change the color of this text. I can decide to make it that, decide to make this that also. Then for this, I can decide to make it this. And for this, I can decide to make it this. And that's okay. So let's go back to our high fidelity screen, which is this. And come in here now, bring in this job card, place it here, and stretch this to this point, like this. Now, this is not evident. The way I can make this evident is by adding a shadow effect. So to add a shadow effect, I would come here, I would click on this effects tab to add a shadow effect. Then I would set my shadow blur to 32. I would set this to 14. And I'll be okay with it like this. I hope this is clear to everyone, like everyone is seeing what I'm doing, yeah? So at this stage, what I'll do is just duplicate this. I'll just have to, I'll duplicate this like this. And you see that all I have to do is to come here, change content, come here, change content, and all of that. So you can see that we have created this with proper guide. So if there are any questions for this, you can, if there are any questions for this, you can just say them to me. Olayemi says audio is still not working. How do I resolve it? You can check if you are muted, and also you can check the audio, the audio device or accessory that you're using. If it's an earphone or anything, you can check that. So what makes a lo-fi different from a hi-fi? A lo-fi does not have principles. Like if I were to be creating a lo-fi, I won't even use an auto layout. I won't even use a layout. I'll just use a shape to just design whatever I have to design. And a lo-fi does not contain colors. Like you don't take note of colors. You don't take note of colors. You don't take note of shadows. You don't take note of the typeface that you are using. Now, the reason why you should always create a lo-fi is this. When you want to present the idea that you have come up with to your boss or maybe the person that gave you the project to build, yeah, you don't need to present the idea to them with colors or shadows or all of that, because they can be distracted and they can leave the user experience that you are trying to create and they'll focus on colors. And they might just be like, this color that you are using is not cool. Like this color is not okay. Give me the other color. Give me that other color. Or take out that shadow. Now, at that stage, at the UX research stage, your concern is not about the colors. Your concern is about the experience and the task flow. So that is why you present it to them with you present a low fidelity prototype where everything is dull. All you are going to make them focus on is for them to approve the flow and the experience that you have created. Now, if they like the way the flow is, then you can start designing your high fidelity screen. Now, if there will be any corrections during the high fidelity screen design process, it will be for maybe colors or maybe for shadows. And obviously that is really easy to correct. It would have been more difficult if you will have to restart your UX process. So that's why you have to use that's why it is necessary for you to use a lo-fi for your presentation. So this is what we have so far. And if I come here in the lo-fi, you'll see that this page is done. We just have this footer section here with copyright. That's actually for formality. But this is actually done. The next serious page, let me just increase this and let me bring in a frame here. And let's have that copyright text there. So I'll make this have that color. I'd have a copyright text there. So I'll make the color of that text to be like this. So if you go to the lo-fi section, you would see that the next page that we have here is this details page, where if the user clicks on any of these job card, they'll be taken here. Now, this page will be designed with the same principle I have been designing with. This page here will be designed easily. All you have to do is bring in the input field that you have created. So if you will have any issues with designing any of these other screens here, you say them in the comment section. All of these other screens are really easy to design because you don't have to create cards or create any complex auto layout. It's just text and all of these. Now, if you will have any issues, you say them in the comment section so that I can explain how you can go about the issues that you'd have. But if you won't have any issues, I would like for you to go ahead and design that. And personally, I would go ahead and I'll design that later, not here in this session, so that we don't waste time. When we come on Monday, I will show you all of the screens. But today, I want us to get introduced to Bubble, which is a low-code development tool. So, someone mentioned here saying when we test prototypes, do we only choose one type of device? No, you don't choose one type of device. You would present your prototype. Okay, is it low fidelity prototype that you're talking about? If it's low fidelity prototypes, you can definitely choose to create them for all three devices. Like, let's create a mobile view of this homepage that we have just created. I'll bring in a mobile phone here. And like we know, we created the header section. We did this before. So to the nav bar. Okay, that was not supposed to be there. So let's keep this here. Okay, so we can bring in this nav bar here. We can squeeze this into this point. I can resize it to this point, resize this to this point, and I can keep this here. Then I would keep that navbar instance selected. I'll set this to 24, the left padding to 24, and the right padding to 24. Then I would select this button. I'd say post job. Whatever you want to have there is okay. So I'll say post job, and that's going to be okay. Now for this button also, you can change this to post the job. Now the next component to have in here is this. You can see how this is, yeah? So you can see that all I have to do now is to resize this point. And that's okay. I'm reusing the same components. I'll bring this in also, this card. I'll resize this. Excuse me. Okay. So I'll bring this in. And I'll resize it. I can resize it to this point. Then I can add my shadow effect. And I can just make this 12. And I can duplicate this. Just like this. Now you can see that just this component that I created, I've been able to use the components on a mobile device and on a desktop device. If I create a tablet screen, I can still reuse these same components. Now, I am able to reuse these components because these components are auto layout components. They are on auto layout. Okay, what should be the margin when using grid lines on mobile? You can use 16 actually. 16 is okay. Sometimes 24 is okay. Sometimes even 12 is okay. Sometimes, but I would advise you not to go above 16 these days because viewers actually want to see their app actually cover their screens to a good extent. Now, somebody says, can we get a guide for sizes, mastering sizes for designs? I discovered you were choosing certain sizes consistently. Okay. If you can throw more insight on the sizes that you're talking about, I would understand. Shortcut to duplicate is Control D or hold down the Alt key on your keyboard. Hold down the Alt key on your keyboard like this. If you hold down the Alt key on your keyboard and you click on any item, hold and move it, that item will be duplicated, just like that. If you are using a Mac, it's your Options key. Hold down the Options key, click on any object, hold and drag, it will be duplicated just like that. That's the shortcut to duplicate. Now, shadow sizes. Okay, I use the shadow size that I use. I set the blur to 32, the opacity to black. The opacity to 12% with a color of black, and the Y value, I set it to 4 with the X value set to 0. You can actually tweak yours to look better than mine. So are there any other questions before we before we round up this session and get introduced to Bubble? Are there any other questions that we have to look at? Once you create an auto layout on an iMac, do we have to create it on a mobile? No, I didn't create an auto layout for a different device. I just made the component. I just created an auto layout, use it to create the components. And when I made the component a component, I have been reusing it. As you can see, I came here, I picked it from the asset panel and I placed it here. All I have to do is resize. Auto layout allows you to resize the component without the component looking bad or without the component losing its content. That's what auto layout allows your components to do. So I'd like other questions. Is there a plugin for converting a web app design to mobile design without designing from scratch? I think there might be some plugins like that, but I don't know about that. Okay, fine. Difference between frame. Okay, like I said, Frames are containers. Shapes are not containers. Shapes are not capable of containing other elements. Only frames are capable of containing other elements. So when you want to create an auto layout or a layout, always use the frame tool. Always use the frame tool. Like you can see, if I create a frame here and I keep a shape inside, if I move the frame, what is inside of it moves with it. But if I create a rectangle here and I create a circle inside of it, yeah, let's make the circle red. You see that when I move the rectangle, the circle is just staying there on its own. It's not moving with the rectangle. But the frame, anything inside the frame will move with it because currently the frame contains that element. That's why. What's the advantage of using Bubble over WordPress or Webflow? Now, we are going to get to that. Okay, then, so that's that. I'd like you guys to go ahead and I will share the link to this file once more. Okay, you don't have to make your no file responsive. It's not necessary, but if your boss asks you to do that, go ahead and do it. So I have shared the link to that. Now, I would like you guys to go ahead, convert all these low-fi screens to high-fi screens, because by Monday, when we are going to be building all of this in Bubble, I would like you guys to also build along. So this is the hi-fi screen that I have created, and I have shown you guys the process. Somebody mentioned color schemes. Now, personally, this is how I create my color schemes. I first of all create a primary color, like a prominent color for my design. If it is blue like this, and I select this, the next color scheme I would create will have to be a variant of this color. Now, this is not me using any design language like material design. This is me creating a color personally. I would come here, I would create a variant of this first one, and I would make it an extreme variant or like an opposite variant, like very light blue, just like this. When creating variants, it is always important that you create a variant that if it sits on its main color, it will look cool. Like as you can see, if I keep this on top of this, it looks cool. So that's how you actually create variants. Use the contrasting method to create your variants. Now, if I want to create a secondary color also, I can come here and say for my app, my secondary color will be, let's say black. Now, if I want to create a variant of this, obviously it's going to be white. So that's how I create my colors personally without using a design language. So let's get started with Bubble. How do we decide the secondary color? It depends on the type of product that you want to design. And your secondary color is not the color that you will use a lot. You would use your secondary colors on things like, let's say, outlines. Sometimes you'd use them on things like badges and chips. Just certain things that are not prominent, that are not always seen. So I'd like you guys to go to your browser and go to bubble.io. Go to bubble.io. Okay. I'd like you to go to bubble.io. Now this is the app. Okay, Blessing says I should recap. I'll do that later. Now, when you get to bubble.io, create an account. When you create an account, then we can start the process of actually setting up our Bubble account. So create an account. It's free. Click on Get Started and create your account. When you create your account, then you can log in. So I have logged into my own account. And That's it. So I'll just explain what Bubble does in a nutshell. Yeah. So Bubble is a low-code development tool that you can use to build a web application, not a website, not just a website, a web application. Now, a web application is a website that has an application inside of it. Yes. And a mobile application is an application that exists on your mobile phone, which is what you download from your Play Store or your App Store. Now, the difference between a website and a web application is that a website does not process data. It does not it doesn't collect data, give results real time, or analyze anything at all. A website is just like your portfolio website where you put links to stuff you have done before, or a regular company website that that somebody doesn't have to log into actually. You just go there, see details about a brand or a company, and that's all. But a web application is capable of authentication, signing in users, logging out users, providing data, real-time data, analyzing data, and giving results. But doing that inside a website. That is a web application. Having an application inside a website. Examples are things like Jumia. For example, when you go to Jumia, you sign in, your credentials will be authenticated. Then you can buy stuff. But on your company website, you can't do that. So Bubble is used to build web applications. Webflow is used to build websites. Sometimes you can create stores on Webflow. You can have the CMS system on Webflow. But WordPress also is used to create stores. You can use WordPress to create certain web applications, but mostly it is used for creating websites. So that's the difference between a website and a web application, and the difference between Bubble and Webflow and WordPress. So, like I demonstrated yesterday, there are so many apps that are built with Bubble, so many web apps. So you can come here, click on Showcase. When you click on Showcase, you'll see all of the apps here. All of these web apps were built with Bubble, all of them. And a very popular app that was built with Bubble is Coins. Coins was built with Bubble. You can go out and check them also. So what we are going to do is to learn how to build a web app. We are going to build this thing that we have designed actually with Bubble. We are going to build it with Bubble from start to finish, make it responsive, and have um, and, and have it be live, where we are going to share the link and people will apply for jobs, and we are going to see the database that people have applied for jobs. Some of us will act like the company is posting jobs. Go there, sign up, create an account, log in, post a job, and see the job listed automatically on the web application. So that's what we are going to do with Bubble. So if you have created an account, what you need to do is to create a new app. Come here, click on create a new app, then give the app a name. Let's call this Jobber Board. You can call it whatever you want to call it. If I call it Jobber Board, you will be unable to call it Jobber Board. Then I would come here, I would select directory and listings, and I'll come here, I would select external or customer facing. Then I would select start a business here. Then I would click on create a new app. The moment you do that, you have launched your Bubble app. And what is remaining is for you to start building it into what you want it to be. As simple as that. I hope everyone is following. Ekemini says no. Okay, I should come again where? Was I breaking? Okay, when you click on create your app, you would have this application assistant show up. What you should do, come here, click on start with a blank page, then click on close the assistant. When you do that, you'll be brought here to your Bubble canvas, to your Bubble editor. This is where we are going to design our web application from scratch. We are going to design it here, configure our database here, and configure our back-end logic with this workflow feature here. So this is where all of the magic is going to happen. Now, Okay, someone said I was breaking. Oh, okay. Come again. No, the Jobber board is not a domain name. It is just the name of the app here in Bubble. When you build your app finish with Bubble, then you can buy a domain name from Hugo Host or Namecheap or anybody. When you buy your domain name, you'd come here in Bubble and then you would upgrade from free to personal plan, and you'd pay, I think, um, let's see the pricing. You'd pay, I think, you'd pay $25 a month, $25 a month to have your app go live. That's it. With $25 a month in Bubble, you can have your app go live. So for those who said I was breaking, I would like us to create a new app once more. Just come here, click on new app, type in the name of the app, select directory and listings, select external or customer facing, then select start a business here, then click on create a new app. And that's it. That's it. When you do that, close the assistant, start with a blank page, and you'll be brought here. Start with a blank page first, then close the assistant, and you'll be brought here. So if there are any questions, I have to take the questions. Okay, come again, please. The difference between web and which is better. Okay, no question, which means everyone is following. So what we are going to do is I would like everyone to build the bubble alongside with me, because if you only listen, you might find it hard to grasp it on your own. So what I would like for us to do, the first thing I would like for us to do here is to configure or to understand the bubble, is the bubble canvas. What we have here, this section here, is similar to this canvas that we have in Figma. It is still the same. It's just like this. Now, this here is your canvas, and this is your application layout. Like Bubble will not allow you to come and create a layout like in Figma, where I would have to select the frame tool and bring in a layout. Bubble already gives you the layout like this. And the layout starts from this blue line and ends here at this blue line. Now, to configure the layout here, double click on it. When you double click on it, you'd have this show up here. The first thing I would want you to do is to come here and click upgrade responsive. Reason is because Bubble has released their new responsive engine that is built with the principles of Flexbox, CSS Flexbox. So when you click on it, you click on upgrade. Then you give some seconds for that to be upgraded. Responsive engine. And this is it. It has been upgraded to the new responsive engine. Close this page. And this is it. Now, the next thing you do again is to double click on this layout once more. Then come here, click on layout here. Then change this container layout. Remember, we have been talking about container. Now, I will really explain how the container process works for those of us who are not used to CSS. So change this from fixed to column. We are going to look at that in the next class. We are going to understand the meaning of changing this from fixed to column or row or all of that. But for now, change it to column, then close this. With this, we have configured our homepage layout. With this, we have configured our homepage layout, and actually, it's as easy as that. With this here, we are ready to start building the front end of our web application before we start thinking about the back end and the back end logic. So my network cracked. Oh my God. Okay. Yes, you can use Bubble to build a mobile app. Okay, I'm coming. I think I'll have to start that again. I'll have to start that again. Now I'll create a new app. If you can hear me, say yes, so that I can start. So that I can start again. All right. So I would click on create a new app. Then I would give it a new name. Let's call it new Jobber board. Then select directory and listings here. Select external or customer facing. Then select start a business. Then click on create a new app here. When you do that, you would wait for the page to load. And when the page loads, you'd be brought here and come here, click on start with a blank page, then click on close the assistant. When you click on close the assistant, the next thing you do is to set your layout, to configure your layout. To configure your layout, the most basic configuration is to double click on it. When you double click on it, come here, you see this button. If you can hear me, say yes, so that I can continue. Okay then. Yeah, okay. If your page does not have column grids like mine, don't bother about it. It doesn't really matter. You can come here and turn it on. Just come here. You can see where my mouse is on. You see show grid. Click on it to select it. Your grid will show up. Yeah. So when you have this come up, the first thing you do is to upgrade your layout to use the current Bubble responsive engine, which is built on the principles of CSS Flexbox. When you do that, it means that your layout has been upgraded to use the new responsive engine of Bubble. And that's cool. So yes, it will be recorded. So is everyone following? Okay then. So if you have upgraded your layout to use the new responsive engine of Bubble, the next thing you do is to still stay on the layout, double click on it, then click on layout here and change the container layout setting to column. I said I would explain why it is changed to column in the next session on Monday. Remember, on Monday, I said it's going to be all about Bubble, no more about Figma. So the reason why I talked about the container concept at the beginning of the class was so that when we get to Bubble, you would understand what I am saying. Now change the container layout setting to column. When you change it to column, it means you are ready to start building the front end of your web application here in Bubble. And on Monday, we are going to see how to use all of these elements here to come up with all the designs that we have here. Now, I'd like to confirm if, okay, lost at upgrade layout. When you click on upgrade layout, it will be upgraded. When it is upgraded, you would close all those pop-ups, all those messages that Bubble brings up. Then double click on this layout once more. Then click on layout here. You can see where my mouse cursor is on. When you click on layout, change the container layout settings to column. And that's all. So if you can follow, we are building a web application, not a mobile application. And yes, Bubble can be used to build a mobile application. Yes. So if you have followed to this point, say yes in the chat box so that I would know that everyone is okay. All right then. So for the job board, I'd like everybody to create a high fidelity to create the high fidelity version of the job board. Create it for the desktop device, the tablet device, and the mobile device. Then when we come in our next session on Monday, we won't talk about design anymore. What we are going to focus on is using Bubble to build our web application for desktop devices, tablet devices, and mobile devices. And we are going to make the app live. And when we make it live, we will share the link and people will apply for jobs and we will see that in the database of the application. And the class on Monday is going to be for 3 hours. It's going to be from 6 p.m. in the evening, Nigerian time, till 9 p.m. It's going to focus only on Bubble. So far, we have seen how to set up our Bubble account, and we have seen how to set the layout in our Bubble app. So that's where we are going to go from there. So I'd like everyone to drop questions, link to the file, the design file. This is it. I can't share the link to the Bubble file because I am not using, no, tomorrow is Sunday. I think most people here are Nigerians and it's good to rest. We don't have a class tomorrow. The class is going to be on Monday. So this is the link to the Figma file. If you have any questions, can you say them? And if you want to send an email to me, or any issues that you have, send it to this email that I'll drop in the chat box. That's the email you should send any complaints to me. I'll be checking the email throughout tomorrow. If you want me to have a private session with you for free, actually, you can reach out to me. If I'm free, I'll book a private Zoom session. You guys can actually bring yourself together, like maybe 10, 15, 20 of you. You can reach out to me and I'll set up a private session to maybe explain auto layout or any concept at all. So that when we come on Monday, we won't spend time talking about designs or talking about Figma. We are going to spend time looking at Bubble. So send the emails to this email address that I just dropped here. So, okay, WhatsApp group. Actually, I'm not a mobile phone person. That's why I'm not a fan of WhatsApp groups. I tend to use my mobile phone less because it's really addictive. So I am trying to distance myself from my mobile phone to not get into that addiction. So that's why I said the email is fine. You can always send me an email and I'll be there to respond. So I hope the class was good, yeah. All right, thank you very much. I can see everyone saying the class was good. So please, for the creation of the high fidelity screens, you guys should either come together and make sure everyone creates it because it is by that way you would learn and understand all the processes. If you guys have any issues, reach out to me through that email, and I'll definitely respond. If you guys create any group on Discord or any of that, you can actually send the link to me. I'll join this, but I want to promise to be active there. The email is my more active routine because that's more about work. Okay. Okay. Any questions? I'm still on actually. Any questions? Okay, people are beginning to leave. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, send them to that email address. Send them to the email address. We have a 3-hour class on Monday, and it's going to be all about Bubble. Send it to the email address. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm going to upload all of these on YouTube eventually. All right then. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day. Bye.